Good day, YouTubers. Reloading Bench back with you once again, focusing on the less glamorous side of progressive press reloading. The downside, I guess, is what I would say. And this is a video meant to emphasize: pay attention, double check, don't take things for granted, even for the seasoned reloader. As I would have liked to have thought I was, but I will also own up to a mistake when I make it. So at the range recently, and started having some feeding issues, and I'm like, what the heck's going on here? So my day was not cut short, but a little frustrating. And when I went to check things out, I found the problem. And this is a correct overall length 45 ACP for me. So 1.232-ish. That's all good. Let's pull out one of my problem bullets. 1.292. And I want to say that I think 7.9 is the max for 45 ACP. Can't honestly remember, but I'm always below that with my, at least I used to be. So it's quite obvious when you hold the two side by side. We got us here a problem. We got a growth issue. Not a good growth issue either. Let me throw this off to the side. So seeing how I had so many foo bars, I'm like, what the heck happened here? What the heck happened here to give me that kind of result when I've been using this setup for years? And that's part of the problem. So when I show you the press, or when I show you where the problem was, you'll be like, you dumbass, you weren't checking your stuff, which, yeah, that is absolutely correct. So I thought what I would do is show you my painful process. Again, the downside of progressive press reloading when you have a boo-boo, and that is bullet pulls. And I started last week tinkering with my cam lock bullet puller. And again, these have such a coating on it, the moly coating. It's slippery, and it was more challenging than it was worth. So I decided to bite the bullet, pun intended, and do it the old school way. And the old school way is with a kinetic bullet puller. So I have my puller, my whatever collet, and I like to use an old piece of rolled steel I picked up probably like 10 years ago, because I had lots of errors when I was first starting. And I like hitting on this. I usually put a piece of cardboard just for my own whatever, peace of mind. But I like hitting on this. I usually have it in the corner of the bench because it's easy, it's firm, and there's no way to mess that up. And then I'm going to leave the primer in there, powder's there. So I have the bullet and I have the powder here, and I'll show you when I move the camera. I'm taking this top off my powder charge, and I'm dumping the whole thing in, bullet and powder, and then I will start the process all over again. And I will do this that many times. Yeah, that sucks. There's just no quick and easy way to resolve this. So painful lesson, and you might ask yourself, well, why don't you just throw these bullets back in your press? Let me get this out of the way for a second. Why don't you just throw these back in your press and just push the bullet in a little deeper, which makes perfect sense if you have a plated bullet. So I will demonstrate what happens if I can actually do it. pushing a plated bullet a little deeper into a cartridge is generally not an issue. Let's see if I have a tall and proud. This looks tall and proud. So I'm going to go over to the press, and I'm just going to reseat this and recrimp it to my correct settings without hopefully knocking into the camera. And I will show you what happens. Ooh, almost knocked into the camera. And it didn't do it as much as I would have hoped it would have. But what happens with lead, and I'll do it for one more, is there's a tendency for the lead to build up or lip over. And here's a good example right here. Lip over the brass. And if you can see it on my fingernail. Now this is a very light version. This is not bad at all. But what happens is that that messes with your tolerances, and you will have feeding issues. So let's see if I can find another one that's maybe wants to be a little more obvious. Yes, I looked for the easy way out, and again, it's kind of good this happened because it... Okay, so that actually came off on my hand. All right, Murphy's Law. As soon as I start putting everything away, I find the perfect example of what happens when you try to force a sized piece of brass that's already crimped, and when you try to push that lead in, this is exactly what happens. This is probably like a worst case scenario, but that is what I was trying to reference. So, bye-bye. So you can see the leading because of the crimp and sizing. So can it be shot? Yeah, I could probably shoot it. Is it the right thing to do? No. No, it is not the right thing to do. So you saw me punch out a couple, decap with the bullet puller, and now I'll show you what I'm doing in the actual powder charge to try and recoup my powder as much as possible and recycle everything. So let me reposition the camera. All right, now I have things giant and everything in the way. So start the day off by taking the top off, and now I have what I would call my strainer. So makes light of or less work of trying to separate powder and bullet. But again, this is a very time-consuming manual process. Head has been ejected, and I'll do one more. So this is how I get to spend my day off. Paying for my mistake, which is a good thing, because nobody was hurt other than my ego for not paying attention, and even more so, a little irritating on what actually happened. And I've had similar instances happen with decapping. When you decap and resize your casing on the Hornady. And this is, I will say this is a downside of the Hornady design, in my opinion. And this is where the blue Kool-Aid fans get to say yay, or any other press that you actually screw in your dies. So let me reposition the camera and talk about that. One moment, please. All right, so I'll show both sides of the press, but station number one, which I'm pointing to, and these are lead eyes for station one. Actually, that's the only lead eye in there. So resize and decap. And as you can see, I now have 2 red dots. I don't know if you can make the second one out, but one is where the lock and load bushing sets in and locks in, and the other is on the press. So obviously when these two line up, I know I'm locked in. So to me, that's a visual, because I've had instances in the past where over time, because of the jarring of the press and whatnot, that the die will walk itself loose, or rather the lock and load bushing will walk itself loose, because it's essentially just a twist lock, as opposed to a die that twists in and is threaded and can't go anywhere. So that, that's a design flaw, in my opinion. I've had people over the years say, "Oh, just pick up shims, and when you do the shims, it locks it in and it won't walk," or whatever. I tried that, and again, stuff just happens over time, just like tightening screws on the press, because stuff walks over time from all of the jarring. The bigger issue for this particular instance, when I had my heads not seat correctly and then crimp, and then if I were to go back and reseat and recrimp, I would have what I would call lipping, or the lead on the lip of the brass, and causing additional problems. So let me move the camera over and I'll show you that problem. So sticking with my handy dandy pointer, this was the bad boy that caused the issue. And what was interesting and different than what happened with the sizing and decapping bushing walking was the bushing didn't walk. So the bushing was locked because I use when I have my bushings in here, I do tend to wrench on them and tighten them in, because I don't want them walking. So this one was a known variable, and this one's easy to spot, because when this one walks or it doesn't seat correctly, you don't deprime. And when you don't deprime, you've got issues on the reprime. So it's very obvious. Sometimes the plate will jam because maybe the primer is just partially out as opposed to fully popped. So that's a pain in the butt. And I think, yeah, it's in there tight now. I don't know what happened here. And this is an RCBS seating and crimping die all in one. And when I started investigating why my cartridge overall length was so far off, I'm going around, I'm touching the dies, and I have a tendency to grab the die at the base to see, oh, did it walk? And I don't know what I did, but when I grabbed the die, it was stiff. It was in there, and my hand accidentally touched the top of the die, and everything here was loose. So the die didn't walk out of the bushing, didn't walk out of the press, but parts of the die unscrewed from the die. Never had that happen before in years and years and years. Not possible on the Lee side, simply because of the design. Well, I won't say not possible. Hasn't happened to me. How's that? Because I'm sure somebody will argue that fact. So what I ended up doing was, once I resized everything so that I'm now getting an appropriate, and we'll do this real time, an appropriate sized bullet. All right, so we are at, that's not the one I needed, naturally. Where's a big giant one? All right, so here we are at 1.294, and you can't see that. 1.294-ish. All right, we will put this die in here. We'll put this bullet in there, rather. And we will resize. We will grab it. And again, you can see there, see the leading, the lipping, and that's just enough to cause issue with chambering. But we're back down to 1.23-ish, right around 3.1, 2.9, 3.2. So I'm comfortable with that. That's where I need to be. And to shame on me for not paying attention or just checking one area. But again, reloading is a constant learning experience. So for me, what did I do with my little pointer? I have lost it already. So for me, doing the visual, and I think you've seen my, well, you can't see it fully because it's being blocked, but yeah, that's not going to help. But on my lockout die, RCBS lockout die, and I'll move the camera over to show that, I'm always aware of the throat walking because it's just a natural tendency for the movement of the press. So I now have, and I'm debating whether I need to put a mark on the press and the bushing to ensure the bushing's not walking. But if I'm looking at this, knowing that I should see all this at, at this angle, call it, 7 o'clock on a clock, I'm reasonably confident. My main concern were these walking here. And now it'll just be a little more, as you get old, you forget stuff, and or you take for granted and you don't check. But now it's check everything, because it's no fun to decap hundreds of bullets individually. And let me show you what I've done on the lockout die. So this I did years and years and years ago, and that was to put reference points to keep my lockout die reasonably aligned. So it'll walk either clockwise or counterclockwise a bit, and I'm always checking that. So now I will be checking 3 dies: my decap die, my lockout die, and my seating / crimp die. So again, this is a live and learn lesson that yeah, everything's, I won't say automated, but everything has been consistent with the press, given some of the quirkiness of the bushings walking, and then having to deal with the fallout of that. So now it's better to test as I go than to get out to the range and find out stuff doesn't go bang. That is it for today. Enjoy the rest of your day. I will be doing lots of pulls. That will be my day. And actually, you know what? I'll show you what I'm going to do. In fact, since I have the camera out and I have 20 or so, let me get some powder out and I'll show you what I'm going to do. So we're going to call this old school. And by that I mean we're going back to the dual bin. And I decided that I didn't want to use the case feeder. So I could use the case feeder if I pop out the sizing and decapping die. And I thought, no, you know what? I'm just going to leave that alone. So let me position, and we'll call this, paying for my mistake. So I've primed the primer. I've got extra powder. Got my WST. I've got more powder in there than I will use. And my whole concept is to do this, again, what I would call a little bit old school. So skipping the first stage, and I've got bullets, although I'm not loading my bullets with this. I am doing it 8 at a time in the bullet feeder. So it's progressive to some degree. Again, I'm going to call this is the reminder for screwing up. That's what happens when you screw up. You need to pay for your mistake. You need to own it. So I am owning my mistake. Not the fastest process in the world, but it's better than doing things one at a time. But it is doing things one at a time, so that's kind of a little bit of an oxymoron. All right, let's get our calipers out. I have absolutely no doubt we're on the money, but we will check to make sure we're on the money. And that is on the money. So again, painful learning experience and little tips for me to help me get better at what I like to do. All right, folks, take care. Enjoy your day.